Hi, I'm Bob Tabor with www.learnvisualstudio.net. In this module, I want to cover some functionality that's installed whenever we install the Azure tools for Visual Studio. Specifically, I want to look at the tools that are available in the Server Explorer to manage Azure storage services like tables, blobs, and queues. So the first thing we'll do is try to connect, then we'll create a new storage account. Once we have an account, then we can work with tables, blobs, and queues, adding whatever it is, a queue or an entity to a table, deleting, updating, things of that nature. Very simple use cases. And I realize that some of the things we'll cover, again, are a retread of things that we talked about in the website's course, because I demonstrated a queue there, and I think we looked at blobs like log files and blobs. So some of this functionality will look familiar. I just wanted to make sure that we devoted a module to it so that, for the sake of completeness, we know where to find the functionality that we need. We don't have to pop out to the Azure portal if we don't want to. We can do everything within Visual Studio, which is awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. You'll first of all want to connect to your subscription. There's a couple of different ways to do this. You can right-click on the node, the Azure node in Server Explorer, or just click the Connect to Microsoft Azure subscription. I'm already logged in, so it's going to say, hey, you want to sign out and log in as a different user. So your experience might be a little bit different there, but you've seen me do this before. And we should be able to now open up the Azure node and see all the various services that we can manage from the Server Explorer. And, cloud services that we talked about in the previous module are here. We can manage Azure SQL databases here. We can manage our websites. We've seen some of these things already. Our focus is going to be, for the storage node, we want to create a new storage account. Now, you can say I have quite a few storage accounts already here, and we might use one of them for our examples. But to create a new storage account, we don't have to go to the portal. We can just right-click and select Create a New Storage Account. We'll choose the subscription that we want to associate with this, and then we'll create Bob's new storage account. And I believe there might be some limitations on what you can name your storage accounts. I seem to remember this because, as you can see, all of my storage accounts are in lowercase. So you might, if you get an error when you're trying to create a storage account, you might want to try all lowercase letters instead of uppercase or camel case. We'll choose the region or affinity group. We'll just choose East US, and then we can choose one of the replication options. We'll just leave it at geo-redundant replication. I'll click Create. Now, it takes a moment after it's created here in the Server Explorer to actually be able to use it. So I'm going to wait here for about 20 seconds or so and let things get completely set up before we move on. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up Bob's new storage account. And you can see that there are nodes for blobs, queues, and tables. So we can have all of these under the same storage account. They will all share the same permission settings and so on. If we were to expand the blobs node, you can see that there are logs that are being collected and saved here for the storage account, as well as a table that will store metric information about this storage account. I'm going to ignore those for now, since we aren't setting them up in the Configure tab and the Monitor tab inside the Azure portal. We're just going to move on and just ignore them. But we are going to start with tables, and we're going to create a new table. And there are some restrictions on what we can name tables. You can see if you click the naming guidelines, it'll pop open a web page in your browser. But I'm just going to call this first table and click OK. And then I'm going to right-click that first table node and select View Table. And it pops it open in the main area. And it says the table contains no entity. Start using the table by selecting the Add Entity button. And so I can select on the Add Entity button here in the little mini toolbar, and I can create a partition key and a row key, and we'll talk about what those are a little bit later. But I can also add additional properties like name, and I'll set that to Bob Tabor, and then we'll add another property, address, something like that. 123 East Main Street, something like that. We'll have to give the partition key and row key values, but I'm not going to do that in this case. What I'm going to do instead is actually use a different storage account and show you what these look like and how to manipulate them inside this main area. So I already know that I have some data in this people table. I don't know how much, but I'm going to click view. All right, so I have 2 rows of data. So from here, we're going to want to add an entity, delete an entity, update an existing entity. And so those operations are very simple. Just take a look at this little mini toolbar here on top. So just to follow this example, I might add a new entity, and kind of to follow what they've done here is to use as the partition key a last name, and then to use as the row key a first name. I'm going to discuss why that's probably a bad idea when we get to the topic of tables a little bit later on. And then I'm going to add another property, and we'll call this hobbies, and I'm just going to add some values here, some string values, and click OK. And this will illustrate the fact that a new entity doesn't have to contain the same properties as other entities inside of the same table. But again, that's an idea that we'll come back to. But here we've added a new entity. I can edit it or delete it from here. So let's just edit, and we'll add another property called email. And we'll just go bob@learnvisualstudio.net and click OK. And you can see it come up. We can also filter entities. So I might want to go where partition key equals Tabor. I think I can do that. Yeah. Or Smith, like that. So we can filter all of the rows by using this this syntax. That's actually the OData query syntax. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And also by selecting a row, I can choose the delete button. Or no, I can't. By selecting a row, I can choose the delete selected entity button, like so. Are you sure you want to delete it? Yes. Okay. So that seems all pretty straightforward. We can also refresh the table in case some other process has added rows since we did our initial query to bring back all the entities into this tabular view. There's also this neat query builder. It's similar to what I did when I typed in partition key EQ and then quote, single quote, Smith or Tabor. You can do the same sort of thing here. Actually, let's choose, instead of partition key, let's choose rows key is equal to Ben, and we can even do another where clause, and this one should be obvious, so I'm going to click OK, and you can see that if you're not familiar with that OData query syntax, you can construct it using this query builder functionality. That's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and run it. And we should only get one entity back, and we do. Very good. Okay, so that's tables. Now let's move on to queues. And here again, I think I have some messages already in the queue. Let's take a look here. Oh, I don't have a queue here, but if I wanted to create a queue, I could, and I'd give it a name, first queue. And now I can reference that queue from my C# code and connect to it. However, again, in this other account that I've already created, I think I already have an example queue, and I think I have messages already in it. So I'm going to right click and select View Queue, and I do indeed have one message in it. Here I can add an additional message, so let me go ahead and click that. It opens up Add Message dialog. We'll call this second message. And I can set an expiration date. So after so many days or so many hours, minutes, or seconds, then this message should be removed from the queue because it's stale. We'll go ahead and leave it at the default. And now you can see I have a second message. Each message has a GUID ID. It also has an insertion time and an expiration time. And since this is a queue, and we said that queues were first in, first out, I would expect to be able to dequeue the original, the first message that we saw when we opened up this view. And so that's essentially the same as deleting it here in this IDE view. And I'll go ahead and click OK, and now that message is gone. Probably the most interesting functionality we'll come across, though, are blobs. So let's go ahead and create a new container. You'll recall that within a given account, you have to create containers. Containers hold blobs, just like folders hold files inside of your own file system on Windows. So let's create a new container, and we'll give it a name. And the first thing that I want to do is to show you some of the properties of this, because we're going to often need to reference a URL for this container. You can see that the URL for this container is the name of the storage account .blob.core.windows.net / and then it'll say first container off to the right if I were to move this over enough. And all right, so accounts will be used as part of the domain name, and then containers are used as kind of like as folders inside of that container. So let's go ahead and view the blob container, and we're going to rely on the mini toolbar again to do a lot of the functionality. One of the things that I want to do is actually upload a blob. So I can browse my file system to find a file, and I happen to know that I have some files in this pics folder. So I'm actually going to select, I'll select all the files, the 3 image files, and then this sample Word document, and I can put these into the container itself, or I can create a subfolder for these blobs. I'm just going to go ahead and put them in the root, and you can see that the Microsoft Azure Activity Log dialog pops up, and briefly we saw how quickly those files were uploaded into blob storage. Now that they're in blob storage, I can do something like this. I can double click on it, and let me bring it over here. Off camera, Microsoft Word started up. There we go. And it showed the contents of this document. Now, if I were to double click on an image, yeah, it opens it up in Photo Viewer. That may not be what I want to do with that file. I may want to just download it to my local hard drive. So I can just right click and say Save As, and I can put this somewhere on my hard drive. And you'll notice some of the other features. I can copy the URL. So let's pop open Notepad here and take a look at the full URL for this image file. And so we have it in first container /wood1.jpg. Great. Save that. I can also filter all the results, so I think I can just do this star.jpg, and no, can't do that. Okay, how about just wood? Yeah, okay, that'll work. So let's go ahead and clear this out and then refresh our view here. Now, what if I wanted to partition these into separate folders or subfolders inside of my container? Let's go ahead and let's remove one of these. So I'm going to remove the wood3.jpg. I'll just right click and select delete. And then I'm going to go and re-upload the wood3.jpg. I'm going to put this in a wood folder and click OK. And you can see now I'm in the wood folder, and I can see the one file, the wood3.jpg file that we uploaded to that folder inside of our container. Now, I can also use this little up arrow to open the parent directory, which puts me back here in the root directory for this container. and then you can see the wood folder is represented as a little folder icon here off to the left-hand side. Now, I actually happen to know that there's no notion of folders and subfolders in Azure storage blobs, and I don't know that there's any practical value to that other than to just know that that's how it works. And I think we've pretty much done everything that we can possibly do with the Server Explorer, so I'll just wrap this up and say that, hey, a lot of great functionality. You don't have to leave Visual Studio. That's very helpful whenever you're debugging your application. You say, I know that I wrote records here. Let me look at those records. Let me look at those entities. Let me look at those messages. Let me look at those blobs. Or you can always bail out and go to the browser-based Azure portal. Okay, so let's continue on with another important tool from the Azure SDK. We'll look at the storage emulator in the next module, and we'll see you there. Thank you.